Week 2 of the NFL regular season is in the books, and I already covered the Dolphins versus Bills. So after this, if you want to see everything and all my takes from that game and what Tua should do next, head over to that video next. But for now, let's jump right into week 2. It was ugly, but a win is a win for the Raiders. I thought the game honestly was over once Derrick Henry did punch it in to make the score 23-16, but they got the ball back, and simply put, the Raiders need to get the ball into Brock Bowers and Devontae Adams' hands. It needs to happen more for this offense to be successful. Minshew was under pressure all day, but finished 30 of 38 for 256 yards and a hit to Adams and rookie Brock Bowers often in the second half, like I said, to make sure that they won this game. Adams had 9 catches for 110 yards, and the last reception was a play action 1-yard score with 3:54 left to tie the game at 23. And the Raiders are now 1-1 with a homecoming game against the Panthers next week, so they easily can be 2-1 following that game against the Panthers next week. For Baltimore, starting 0-2 is not good at all for them. Their first touchdown wasn't until the third quarter against this pretty bad Raiders defensive line. I mean, the Ravens again repeatedly made things more difficult for themselves than they needed to be. They were called on 10 penalties for 109 yards compared to 3 for 15 yards for the Raiders. The biggest penalty of the day probably was when Brandon Steffen's defensive pass interference call on Devontae Adams in the end zone that set up the 1-yard touchdown catch to tie the game with 3:54 to play. And look, it doesn't get easier from here for the Ravens. They have a brutal schedule going forward. Now they sit at 0-2 with these next 3 games at Dallas, home versus Buffalo, and then at Cincinnati. The Ravens are in big trouble if they don't turn it around quickly and are looking at an 0-3 start. Over to Carolina for Panthers versus Chargers. It was a dominant performance from start to finish as the Chargers took control early and never looked back. Winning on the road is never easy, but the Chargers made it look effortless. I mean, I know this is the Panthers, but their ground game was particularly impressive, racking up 219 rushing yards, which leads us to the first major takeaway that the Chargers run game is officially back and is exactly what they envisioned last season. J.K. Dobbins was exceptional once again, leading the way with 131 rushing yards, including a 43-yard touchdown late in the second quarter. Gus Edwards also contributed, carrying the ball for 18 times for 59 yards. And I mean, from the start, the run game was going, and it was clear that Dobbins has been a standout through the first 2 weeks for the Chargers. On top of that too, I myself am happy to see Quentin Johnston finally catch some passes, but maybe that's because he's on my fantasy team, but I'm finally happy to see him turn it around. The Chargers will stay on the East Coast to face the Pittsburgh Steelers next Sunday, followed by a division showdown with a back-to-back Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. But with momentum on their side, the Chargers will aim to keep it rolling and improve to 3-0 in Pittsburgh. As for the Panthers, it's pretty simple. They stink. They're so bad that they benched Bryce Young and are starting Andy Dalton next week. I mean, the play where Bryce Young runs around and then takes a 12-yard loss for a sack instead of throwing it away pretty much sums up their season, and I don't see it getting much better from here. And down to Dallas for the Saints versus Cowboys, and I'm going to keep this one short because I did do a full breakdown on this game yesterday, so if you want to see this video, then click the card above or check the video out after. But simply put, Dallas needs to figure it out. If they want to keep paying Dak all this money, he better stop throwing interceptions, and the defense needs to step it up. For the Saints, it's pretty simple. They look like a wagon right now. If they can keep running the ball with Alvin Kamara and Derek Carr keeps playing this well, then the Saints are going to spell trouble for a lot of teams this year. But let's head up north for Bucs at Lions, and simply put, the Lions defense looks for real, and on top of that too, Jamison Williams looks very real too. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson is a very good football player if you did not know that, and on top of that, on the defensive side, he had 5 sacks on the day today, almost broke the franchise record but couldn't get it done. But this dude has a real shot at winning the defensive player of the year if he continues to play like this, and Aiden Hutchinson, for what it is, fits perfectly into Dan Campbell's type of defense. It was finally awesome to see Amon-Ra St. Brown getting involved in the passing game, but they couldn't finish this game, and the Bucs did win. Flipping over to the Bucs side, and well, I think it's safe to say that this team is for real this year. Baker Mayfield's mobility has shined in Liam Cohen's offensive scheme. I mean, in week 1, he averaged 7 yards on 3 rushing attempts for 21 yards in total, and then this week, Mayfield recorded a team high 34 rushing yards on 5 attempts, finding the end zone late in the third quarter as well on foot. We all know how good Mike Evans is too, but Chris Godwin has added another dimension to this offense, leading the Bucs with 117 receiving yards and a touchdown on 7 receptions in this game. I mean, Godwin's 41-yard receiving touchdown came early in the second quarter and put the Bucs ahead 13-6. The Bucs are a good football team and easily can be 3-0 after next week too. To Lambeau Field for Colts at Packers, and Malik Willis's first start while Jordan Love is injured, and honestly, the Packers were leaning on the run game well. They knew what they had to do, and they did just that. Like, I don't know how the Colts weren't able to stop this run game. They said they were going to run the ball pretty much all week long because Love is out, and they successfully ran it for 261 yards on 53 attempts. Like, that is absolutely absurd. And if the Packers can win one more while Jordan Love is out, then I fully expect their playoff hopes to be alive. As for the Colts, Richardson is not bad. It's just that you don't know which Anthony Richardson is going to show up each week. He is just a yo-yo and so up and down. I mean, the kid's only played 19 games, and you really don't know which guy is going to show up, but he still is a freak of nature and has to be played each week, and I think over time will develop better, similar to how we saw Jordan Love as he played later in the year got much better. year. Their defense on the other side, though, has a serious issue stopping the run, even though they knew exactly what the Packers were going to do all week long. Like, you had a full week to prepare for the Packers run game and still gave up almost 300 rushing yards. This is a very talented team that should not be 0-2. They need to bounce back, otherwise they are going to be in serious trouble. To Florida for a very interesting game between the Browns at Jags. This was a bounce back game for Deshaun. He had to get it done, and to their credit on the offensive side of the ball in the first half, the Browns defense only faced 4 Jaguars offensive drives in the first half. The Browns were able to run the ball well, moving the chains and draining the clock, and that gave Cleveland's defensive unit a lot of time to rest. On the defensive side of the ball, this was a major step in the right direction for Myles Garrett and company. Jim Schwartz's defense was stellar last year at home. However, when the team went on the road, the defense did not have the same success. They struggled against teams like the Rams and others, and especially in the wild card round got absolutely dismantled by the Texans, but that was not the case today. As for the Jaguars, their 2 losses have been rough. T-Law is basically throwing only to Brian Thomas and needs much more help. I'm honestly not sure what they're going to do at the wide receiver position, but if it isn't figured out soon, this team is going to be struggling a lot this year. To Minnesota for Niners at Vikings, and CMC is now possibly out for 6 weeks, so that means Mason is going to be playing a lot more. Simply put, the Niners didn't look great all day. They struggled against this Brian Flores-led defense, and I mean, honestly, if the Vikings can keep playing this way, then that is going to be a lot of trouble for a lot of teams in the NFC. Sam Darnold keeps playing clean ball and honestly looks like an MVP candidate, or at least a comeback player so far, and the Vikings will keep winning games as long as he keeps playing clean ball like he did today. Justin Jefferson also gave us a nice reminder that he is still the best wide receiver in the NFL, and moving forward, the Vikings are a very underrated team. Up to Foxborough for Patriots versus Seahawks, and I mean, honestly, the Patriots are outperforming everybody's expectations right now. The Patriots did manage to string some awesome drives together, but at the end of the day, they ended up not completing those drives and only coming away with field goals or just turning the ball off. They really need to turn that around if they do want to have at least some sort of chance of winning some games this year. And as tempting as it is to start Drake May this year, I do believe that he won't start until later in the year. But let me know in the comment section what you guys think they should do for Drake May. Should he start this year or should he wait? As for the Seahawks, they were playing very balanced football today. Geno Smith had a great game in tough circumstances. On top of that, though, Jackson Smith and Jigba had the most productive day of his career and came through in a big way on a 3rd down. And not only that too, but so did DK Metcalf, honestly showing what the potential of this young wide receiver core that the Seahawks do have, the potential that they do have to be successful. As I said, Njigba had the biggest game of his career, recording a career high in receptions in 12 and receiving yards of 117, and did a lot of damage to move the sticks on 3rd down. Of Njigba's 9 catches, 4 came on 3rd down for a total of 46 yards, with 3 of those 4 catches resulting in major first downs for the Seahawks to stay in this game. Over to Tennessee for Jets at Titans. The Jets were coming off of a short week, and as ugly as this Jets offense was, they did just enough to win this game. Aaron Rodgers went 18 of 30 for 176 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he honestly didn't always look sharp, held onto the ball a few too many times, and the Jets offense honestly struggled to get the ball to the line of scrimmage in a timely manner. Rodgers just doesn't look like his normal self, especially considering that he is coming off of the torn Achilles. He is going to be more of like a statue in the pocket, which I think honestly is affecting his play style a little as well. Also, another big thing that we're going to have to keep an eye on for the Jets, they did lose their defensive captain and leader with linebacker CJ Mosley, left in the first half with a toe injury and did not return. And on top of that too, Jermaine Johnson suffered what looks like to be a torn Achilles and would end his season, as well as DJ Reader did not play due to a knee injury. I mean, honestly, this defense looks like it is going through a lot right now, and if they cannot play some good defense, then they are not going to be in a lot of ball games. As for the Titans, Will Levis is going through what we could say some growing pains. I mean, Levis had another boneheaded turnover, and this one his coach even was really mad about because it was in the red zone too. I mean, in week 1, his turnover cost the game against Chicago, and now this one in week 2 also similarly kind of swung the momentum in favor of the Jets. On the defensive side of the ball, the Titans have looked fantastic, but because of Will Levis's kind of silly mistakes, it has not been rewarded. They held New York to just 265 total yards on offense, with Rodgers under duress much of the day. The Titans honestly look tired late, and that's probably not surprising considering how much effort this defense is doing, but they have been stingy and have yet to force a turnover this season, so if the offense can figure things out, this Titans team can be in the hunt. To the nation's capital for Giants at Commanders. And honestly, Jaden Daniels is proving to possibly be the best quarterback from this draft. The Commanders scored on all 7 of their full possessions in week 2 in their week 2 victory over the visiting New York Giants. One concerning thing to me is that Jaden Daniels seems to be doing a lot more running than he should be doing. It almost seems like he's forgetting about his passing reads and just kind of putting his head down and taking off. Regardless though, the Commanders snapped a 9-game losing streak dating back to last season and earned their first home win since week 1 of last season. Washington's defense did allow for this Giants offense to move the ball, but when Daniel Jones is the quarterback, quarterback, you can definitely count on some botched opportunities. As for the Giants, we really can't blame this loss on Daniel Jones as much as we want to. He played a pretty good game too, and on top of that, Malik Neighbors is going to be a problem as we move forward into the season. Over to Arizona for Rams at Cardinals though, and simply put, the Rams situation is scary. They are down with a lot of injuries, and they direly miss Aaron Donald up the middle to generate pressure and stop in the run game. Their left tackle will return this week after serving a 2-game suspension for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy, so hopefully that will help as well. Needless to say though, the Cardinals were generating pressure. They sacked Stafford 5 times, including 3 times by Dennis Godric, who also forced a fumble. If this Rams offense wants to survive, then Kyren Williams needs to get going. I mean, a week after rushing for 50 yards and a touchdown and 18 carries against the Lions, he managed only 25 yards and a touchdown and 12 carries against this Cardinals team. Not only that too, but Cooper Kupp did also go out with an injury, so it is definitely going to be scary to see what happens with the Rams for the rest of the season. As for the Cardinals, it's pretty simple. They got Marvin Harrison the ball, and he is here. Harrison went into Sunday having only caught 1 pass on 3 targets in the Cardinals season opening defeat against the Buffalo Bills, but on Sunday he made a spectacular catch for a 28-yard touchdown that capped off the Cardinals' first possession, and then after the Rams went 3 and out, Harrison broke free for a 60-yard touchdown pass. He finished the first half with 4 catches and 130 yards and is now living up to the hype of being selected so high. If the Cardinals can keep playing this well, then I fully expect them to be a playoff team. Over to Denver for Steelers at Broncos, and as crazy as this sounds, Justin Fields is 2-0. And don't get me wrong, I know it's not like he's out there throwing for 300 yards, but Fields managed the game well in the first half, completing 10 of 12 passes for 101 yards and a touchdown. He also added 26 yards on the ground, and it was one of the better quarterback performances the Steelers have seen in the last several seasons, but I mean, clearly that bar is pretty low considering names like Kenny Pickett and the others. And while Fields has continuously shown his dynamic running ability and has continued to improve as a passer, the Steelers still have scored just 1 touchdown in 2 games. So I mean, whether they stick with Fields or Wilson, the Steelers need to continue to improve offensively. As for the Broncos, it's kind of starting to become worrisome of how concerning Bo Nix's mistakes are. Like, yes, his development is definitely going to be a long-term process, but it's the nature of Nix's struggles through the first 2 games of his career that are concerning. The interception in the back of the end zone in the 3rd quarter was his 3rd of the year, and they've been agonizingly similar. Nix threw off his back foot to Courtland Sutton, and a defensive back lurking underneath made an easy pick. Like, I mean, that pick pretty much took Denver all the way out of the game. But I mean, we can't put all the blame on Nix for this pretty bad offensive performance, which includes a 1 of 6 start in the red zone through 2 games. And the road doesn't get easier here for Nix either. They were hopeful that he'd be able to avoid this early in the season, and with 2 straight road games against defensive head coaches in the Bucs and Jets ahead, the road doesn't get easier at all. Over to Arrowhead for Bengals versus Chiefs, and as always, the Joe Burrow versus Patrick Mahomes game always lives up to the hype. Starting with the Chiefs, and their defense has been making clutch play after clutch play after clutch play. As I said before in the close game against Burrow, this Chiefs defense did more than enough to give the offense a chance to win the game late in the 4th quarter, and when you have the best quarterback in the NFL, that is all you need. Steve Spagnuolo's unit held the Bengals to just 1 touchdown in the 2nd half, and in fact, the Chiefs' lone touchdown in the 4th quarter was produced by the defense. Sadly though, the Chiefs did lose Isaiah Pacheco, it seems for at least a few weeks, considering he did possibly have a fracture in his leg, so that will hurt the run game a little bit, but I do think that the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL right now. Flipping over to the Bengals side, they honestly look the part of being a good football team, but they're still 0-2. Like, Sunday felt like the renewal of this perennial NFL rivalry between the Chiefs and the Bengals, but it is why they point Burrow and the Bengals as a top candidate to end the Chiefs' Super Bowl run. Simply put though, they just haven't been playing that great of ball to start the season. As we all know, they're not a great team to start the season, but we still can't be giving them that excuse. Burrow threw for more yards to his tight ends in the first half than he did in any game in his career, and this was a new wrinkle that Cincinnati hoped to unleash this year, but they probably honestly didn't imagine it going this well this fast. He found Mike Gesicki for a 37-yard 4th down conversion in the 1st quarter and 2 other explosive completions later in the game as well. I am concerned a little bit about Joe Burrow's hand, but if he can continue to play as well as he did in this game and keep them in games, then I don't see why the Bengals can't make a run later in the season. But I want to know what you guys think. What are your key takeaways? From week 2 this season? Honestly, for me, if the Bengals and Ravens can't figure it out soon, they are definitely going to be missing the playoffs this year, as crazy as it sounds. I mean, both of them have very tough divisions to win or even try to get out of. So if they can't figure it out, I fully expect neither of those teams to be in the playoffs. But again, make sure that you guys let me know down in the comment section what you think about your team and what's going to happen for the rest of the season. For me, I'm a Saints fan, so I'm pretty hyped. But again, if you did enjoy the content, make sure that you guys like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I will catch you guys in the next one.